right.
Little hair out of place here or there.
And we're off and running. Hello, everybody.
Hello and welcome. I'm Carola Eastwood.
And I'm Chetan, Parkyn. Welcome.
And if this is your first time to join us, we want to offer you a very, very warm welcome. We're broadcasting today, Saturday, the 22nd of June. This is our monthly Energies and Opportunities call, which we provide for our community and anyone who wishes to come. It's a complimentary service. And what we do is we look at the energies for the coming month. So in this broadcast, we're going to be looking at July, but we're going to start with where we are now, late June, and cover the remainder of June, and then go through the month of July. As I said, we do this once a month. And if you have opted into our mailing list, you'll get notifications about when these broadcasts are going to be live. They're always on a Saturday morning, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. And just another announcement or two before we dive into the really compelling energies this month. We've got 2 eclipses to tell you about, which are very powerful changes in the energy pattern. Yeah. And we're excited to share that with you. We wanted to let you know, in case you haven't seen it, and if you're new to our community, that we do have a reading special. So this is a special on a 90-minute human design deep dive reading with Chetan. And in addition to that, a bonus of a 1-hour human design coaching session with me. So this is our best promotion of the year. It's happening now, and I think through most of July. So take a look at that, and if it calls to you, something that you would love to do, this is the time of year to do it, because you'll get this very special extra hour in which I work with you deeply one-on-one to help you ground the information in your human design so that you can make that useful and apply it to your life right away and in the coming times.
You'll find that this reading special that we do, it will be a turning point in your life.
Absolutely, a powerful one.
Yeah.
As you know, you can read our testimonials if you'd like to find out more about that. They're on our website on the testimonials page. But take a look. And the other thing, for those of you who are studying with us in our human design training program, we do have another level 4, which is the professional human design certification program, and that one will be coming up, produced in September. So for those of you who are interested in attending that live with us, it'll be in San Diego, California in late September. So you also will be getting emails about that if you happen to have already studied with us. If not, you'll need to email contact@humandesignforusall.com and specifically ask to be put on that list. All right, so that's it for announcements for the month.
So let's set the stage for where we are in this moment in time. 22nd of June, 2019, and we've just had a full moon.
Yeah, that was on June 17th. Did you want to talk? You want me to start?
Okay. I figured you were going to say something about this full moon, because the changing of the moon, that, you know, the nearest satellite to us, it has a huge effect. It draws the emotions, it draws the energies from us, and puts us in the possibility of a very different, perhaps more intuitive space.
Absolutely. So the full moon is the bringing to fruition of the energies that are set at the new moon 2 weeks before the full moon. The full moon this month, June 17th, so that was a few days ago, the full moon at 26 degrees of Sagittarius, for those of you who know a little astrology, and opposing, of course, the sun, because the full moon is an opposition of the sun and the moon. The full moon opposing the sun at 26 degrees of Gemini. So what we have is the sun moving to completing its transit through the sign of Gemini, 30 days of that before it moves on, which it's already done as we speak. It moves on to the sign of Cancer, which happened yesterday, Friday, June 21st, at the summer solstice, or what we call the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, of course. In the southern hemisphere, for our friends who live in the southern part of the globe, this will be the beginning of your winter. For those of us north It's the beginning of our summer. That occurred basically on Friday morning, Pacific time, just before 9 a.m.
So beginning of winter in Australia, I hear they've already been having snow.
Wow.
So
Well, we've actually already been having heat. So
anyway.
yeah, so here we are at this powerful juncture in time. We mentioned the summer solstice because it's a big turning point in the year. We only have 2 solstice points in the years, summer, winter, and that's a time at the summer solstice is the time of maximum light, obviously, but also maximum intensity on focusing on our goals for the year. So let's take a look at how all of that may unfold. If we can have our map on the screen.
Can I just say a little bit about the full moon that we've just had?
Yeah.
You know, it's always interesting with human design to have a look at exactly where these things take place. And the full moon is taking place on the 17th, took place in conscious sun in gateway number 12, which is the gateway of standstill. And in the 4th line, the sun was sitting at the same time the moon was in the 11th gateway, the gateway of peace and harmony and ideas, and in the 11th gateway, the 4th line. And the 4th line is always this particular part in any hexagram where there's this possibility to reach out and connect into other people's lives. The sun in the 12 with the 4th line is the line that we call prophesying, its ability to look into the future a little bit. So we may all have had some downloads or some prospects about what it is that's been coming up for us in these weeks, months, years ahead. And the moon sitting in the gateway number 11 with the 4th line, this 4th line where there's this potential to reach out through harmony to find out who's with us, who relates to us, who gets the same concepts of ideas and harmony. How can this planet develop a consciousness where people really learn to get on with each other and in a continuous way? So I just wanted to touch bases on that one.
Excellent. Okay, so, and I would add to that and say that, of course, the astrological energies that we also follow reflect the same sort of pattern. They show us a little bit different way of experiencing the energies that are important for us to really incorporate now. Essentially, at this full moon that we just had and the energies moving into the summer solstice, we have the planets Mercury and Mars. Mercury has to do with communication. Mars has to do with our work in the world. In the sign of Cancer, connecting with the moving soul path for all humanity. So each of us has our own individual, unique soul path, our purpose for our lifetime, and the way that we intend and plan to unfold that purpose over time. But humanity also has a soul path. And we can see where humanity as a whole is on the soul path by looking at the energies. And for the energies right now at the solstice, the soul path in the sign of Cancer, which is a sign of nurturing and caring, it's a sign of family, it's a sign of security. What is it that we have in our life that is our foundation, is our security? And who are the people that comprise our family? It might be your biological family, it might be an adult family that you've chosen, but the people who are closest to you who will be there for you no matter what. So really nurturing the value of those connections, of that family, of that community, of your home, of your grounding, where you stand in life. And looking at all of the big transformation that's happening in the world, the breakdown of systems. Here we see that with Saturn and Pluto together in Capricorn. Capricorn, the sign Capricorn has to do with systems. So our government systems and political systems and monetary systems and
there's a bit of a rearrangement going on.
Tax systems and healthcare systems and education systems, all going through a massive transformation. Pluto, the planet that has to do with death and rebirth, letting go of the old so that something new can get born. And Saturn bringing the structure, bringing the restructuring. So where in our lives as a humanity are things breaking down? I think we can see that. It's obvious. All you have to do is read a newspaper if you dare. And where do we need to hold our ground, our truth, our clarity, and be the light in the dark night of the soul for humanity? Because following the dark night of the soul, what happens? There's rebirth. There's a new light. There's a new pathway opening. And that's the time that we're living in now. And specifically this summer solstice really calling us to be clear about our role in the overall unfoldment of the new awareness, the new dawning, the new awakening, the new age that we're in right now.
So I just have to confess, I was born in the 50s and, you know, born in England as well. And England was kind of trying to piece itself back together again after the Second World War. And it was an extraordinary time in that the country was broken, basically. Like, so many people had died and industry had been totally burned out in producing stuff for war material. And now, you know, 75 years later, and we've just recently had this celebration in Normandy for the D-Day invasion that basically set in place the ending of the Second World War. And so, you know, here we are in this time now where it is inconceivable that ever we should go into a world war again. And so I just want to lay out the backdrop of the outer planets. These are the planets that really affect the consciousness on a very, very deep level, just to see what it is that's going on there, and the encouragement for us to make a move out of the old systems of what we might describe as the Piscean age, where we were following a bold leader, you know, and the whole thing was based on the faith in the integrity of the leader and the people around that leader. So the backdrop of everything here is Pluto, the furthermost planet in our solar system that we count within human design, is in gateway number 61. 61 is the gateway of inner truth, and it sits up here in the crown center. So all of us are encouraged more and more in this year, for the next couple of years, to associate our lives with what resonates with us, what we can count on as being absolutely truthful on a personal basis, and recognizing where does that truth echo in the world around us. The planet Neptune at the moment is in gateway number 22, which is in a gateway in the emotions center, and it's the gateway of grace. It's also the gateway of disgrace as well, but we would always see, you know, how can we associate ourselves with that rising of the spirit. And, you know, Neptune has everything to do with associating with our spirit nature. It can also take us off into, you know, abstract situations as well, like confusing, foggy situations. But the essence of our spiritual nature, Neptune's quality, is love for love's sake. Then the planet Uranus at the moment is in gateway number 27. And the 27 is the gateway of nourishment. So we're all familiar with diet and what we eat and how we nourish our bodies in that way. But also nourishment can be seen in, you know, who do we spend time with? What do we spend time doing? You know, are we associating ourselves with what is natural and with nature? You know, do we have any kind of an association with other living forms on this planet here? So literally, are we filling ourselves with nonsensical, virtual realities, or are we associating ourselves directly with our life experience around us? And the planet Saturn at the moment is in gateway number 54, which is the gateway of ambition. And it's covering the tracks that Pluto was in just recently. And it's calling all of us to recognize, you know, what are we doing in our lives that wants to be put out as a unique form of creativity into our lives. And the interesting thing at the moment is Saturn is joined in with the South Node destiny for humanity. So all of us are having this recap at the moment. Where are we coming from? What are we associating ourselves with? What is it that really wants to come through us on a truthful level into the world around us? So that is the energy in which we lead out on this beginning of this talk we have today, and we'll see how it evolves in these weeks ahead as we get into July.
And the energy of the solstice building up to these eclipses, building up to retrograde Mercury, which we'll talk about when we get a little further into July. But let's look at the third quarter moon. That happens on June 25th, so just about, 3 days from now. The third quarter moon is the first point after the full moon in which we have another kind of important check-in to look and see, all right, with whatever was revealed at the full moon that's important for us to learn, understand, do, express, be, embrace. This third quarter moon is a kind of a check-in point saying, all right, so have we done that? And to what extent have we done that? As Chetan was saying, to what extent have we found that alignment within ourselves? One of the things that we see at this third quarter moon, the sun having moved into the sign of Cancer, which is what the summer solstice is about, the sun going into the sign of Cancer, has moved now into a right angle with Chiron. Chiron is it's a huge asteroid that functions more like a planet. And it's associated with the linking of the higher self and the lower self. So the spirit essence with the personality that we think of ourselves as being walking through this life, linking of those two. So we either can be this personality just sort of run amok, just doing our own thing in life, and as Chetan said, nonsensical things or things that don't really in the end matter, or we can align with our spirit essence, our soul's calling, and do that. And that's really the question at this time. What needs to happen for us to get into greater alignment with our soul essence, to live our purpose? That's the question at this third quarter moon. Are we doing that? And if we're doing it to some extent, are we doing it to the fullest extent? And if not, how can we then make a choice to do that? That's the essence of it. Yes, we have some of these lovely aspects going on with also with the sun in the early signs of Cancer, in a very favorable aspect with Uranus. Uranus is the awakener to higher states of consciousness. This goes on through all the way the end of June, in which we're beginning to see what is it for us that we need to step into to awaken the highest awareness in ourselves and then bring that into expression in the world. So the challenge, what else do we need to learn, do, heal, transform, move through, realize, break through in order to have that soul alignment and live more and more from that place of soul alignment? We've got some aspects that are just sort of completing now, that have been active, and we'll finish up here in, by June 25th, 26th, 27th, moving out. A little bit of confusion around our values, and a need to look again more deeply at our values. All of that sort of cleaning up our thinking, our awareness, getting us ready for these two powerful eclipses that will be coming in one in early July and one in mid-July.
So as we move towards the end of the month of June, the sun has dropped into gateway number 52. And the gate 52 is the gateway called mountain and stillness. And what happens in human design is we see wherever the sun sits, there's always these three other aspects that are very interesting to have a look at. The one is, the sun and the earth are opposite each other in human design. So in terms of human design, what is yin on one side is yang on the other. What is receptive on one side is more outgoing on the other. And we also have a look-see going back 88 degrees of solar arc as part of human design, seeing where does the sun fall 3 months before us, what was setting the stage for this particular moment in time. And with the sun going into the 52, we've entered into the life theme that we call service. And it's a fascinating concept, service. Like, what is our service in life? Are we just here to serve ourselves, or are we here to serve humanity and everything around us? And I had to ponder this particular life theme quite a bit to just realize, service is not a personal thing in terms of delivering directly to somebody else. It's something that is fulfilling for ourselves, that we have the capability to offer our gifts and abilities into other people's lives, but it needs to happen without any sense of a direct return for that. If we get rewarded for it, fantastic. but it's not that the two things are linked together. It's a very, very important concept to understand.
So one isn't dependent on the other.
There's no tie-in, there's no codependency, there's no dependency at all. It's just I'm offering of whatever it is from my state of stillness and from my sense of joyfulness. It is my joy to be able to offer this. And we closed out the month with this particular flavor in the air of just how is it we provide into the world around us. And at the same time, we have this run of Mercury and Mars very close together with each other in gateway number 56, which is one of the gateways of the storyteller. And how do we get stories? We get them through the experiences that we have and the insights and the ideas that come to us. So a lot of these stories are generated through travel, through our communication, through our storytelling, through our story listening. And so it's a very inspired end of the month to have this quality of service and to at the same time be experiencing all kinds of different aspects to our lives, to be very much stimulated through the environment, perhaps through the travels that we're undertaking, through the meetings that we're having.
So let's move to this upcoming new moon solar eclipse on July 2nd. This is an almost total solar eclipse. And for those of you who followed our work and our monthly broadcasts for some time, you know that we always emphasize the eclipses because they're extra powerful turning points for all of us. Now, some of us experience them more powerfully than others according to where they're falling in our own chart. So where they're falling in our human design matrix, where they're falling in our astrological chart, will say a lot about where the biggest changes, where the biggest breakthroughs are possible for us uniquely individually. So in the, in this broadcast, we're talking about more generalizations for all humanity, but you'll see it's all going to apply to you either definitely directly, either profoundly, powerfully, or at least peripherally, and most likely for most of us, it'll stir up some changes, some important changes. Because it's an almost total solar eclipse.
So peripherally, you'll say we're going to watch things happening in the world around us that relate directly to this eclipse.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Or in other people's lives, right? Yeah. I mean, they're going to affect each of us directly because the effect is powerful. However, for some of us who are getting this absolute, it's a right-on hit to our chart, it's really stirring up some stuff. So what is a solar eclipse? It's a point of maximum awareness about change, either impending change or change that's underway now, or or change that we're resisting but must happen. So one thing that we can say really about life is that, and you've heard this before probably, the only constant in life is change. The only thing we can count on is change. Life is ever evolving, ever moving, always changing. And there are some times when those changes are very subtle and they're just month to month kind of changes and things just sort of flowing along and moving along. And there are times when there are more intense changes, more noticeable changes, like real turning points. Eclipses are turning points. So what is this turning point about? It happens in the sign of Cancer, 11 degrees Cancer. So for those of you who know your astrology chart, if you have planets close to 11 degrees of Cancer, like on either side of it by 2 or 3 degrees, then you know for sure this eclipse has your name on it. So pay attention, heads up, right? But powerful change point in terms of what we consider our security in life. What is it that we can really count on? So the sign Cancer is about security. It used to be, like Chetan was saying earlier, that we could count on, the 30-year career with a pension, or the things that in the Piscean age we could count on going to church and hearing a consistent message and everybody sort of believing the same thing we do, or we could count on our government, our political system, our educational systems. Now, when we look around, we don't know what we can count on. So what that leaves us with is, well, we can count on ourselves.
Personal responsibility
right,
time.
and personal awareness,
Yeah.
right? So awakening to our role in creating the let's say security that we can create for ourselves in life. Is there any real security ever? Here we are broadcasting from Southern California, from San Diego. I mean, we could have an earthquake at any time. We could be sitting here and all of a sudden there's a huge earthquake and we're not even here anymore, right? I mean, what is ever really certain in life? You know, I was sharing this with the group who follows us in our Energies and Opportunities program, which we produce on a weekly basis. About, gosh, how many years ago was it now? Almost 20. A little bit more than 20. I had something happen in my life that was a real earth-shattering kind of experience. My closest friend, the woman who I felt closest with because we had a spiritual connection like I'd never experienced with anyone else or any other girlfriend. And she was killed in a very heinous way. Suddenly, it was a shock. It was just a horrendous thing. And at the time of her death, she and her daughter both died. Her husband came and stayed with us. And I was taking a walk with him out by the ocean, and we were sitting and just meditating, contemplating for a minute, looking out at the vast Pacific Ocean on a sunshiny, clear day in September. And her soul came into my reverie there, and she said to me one thing, one simple thing. She said, you know, Carola, the only thing that matters in life is that you love. I think that's essentially the message of this time, and particularly of this eclipse. The only thing that really matters, and like Chetan was saying about being of service, is that we love. Not from a sacrificial place, from a joyful place, from a place of being filled up with our own love, with the love that we are, and then sharing that because it's joyful to share it, because it brings us joy. And that is the essence of pure creativity. So that's potentially what we can learn at this solar eclipse. Both eclipses, solar eclipse and lunar eclipse, indicate changes. Solar eclipse indicate change at a deep cellular kind of internal level. And we'll see in a couple of weeks, we'll have a change that's more at an external level. So if I could wrap it all up in a nutshell, that's what I would say about this eclipse. That's what it's bringing, is that message. There's nothing you can really count on in life except that you are love and that you do love. And when you count on that, life becomes quite magical.
So I think over the years, we've all been persuaded to think that what happens on the outside of our life has nothing to do with us. It's all, you know, we're victims of circumstance in a way. But, you know, what becomes the real truth is what happens on the outside is actually our experience. And, you know, if we choose to not engage with it, then, you know, life does become a real hazard for us. So, you know, all of us have been guided in this time, in this entry into the Aquarian age, to become more and more resourceful and more in touch with our own lives. And the salvation is always present tense. You know, in present tense, we are actually here. We are actually in it. So we all get drawn off into other things. And the consequence of this particular eclipse that's taking place, I'm always interested to see, you know, where there's the sun, and at this moment in time, where's the moon? They're both in the same part of the sky, the one covering the other in terms of our viewpoint from planet Earth. And it's in gateway number 39. And gateway number 39 is the gateway of provocation. And I always see 39, it's like poking life. Is there any life in there? You know, let's put this scenario up in front of you and just see, are you going to rise to the occasion or are you going to get bowled over by it? And so it happens in the 39 with the second line, and the line is called encountering. Engaging adversity as a means to self-discovery. You learn to grab the bull by the horns, whether it feels comfortable to do so or not. And grabbing the bull by the horns means that, yeah, this is my life. This is my scenario. This is my movie that's playing out here. You know, I'm actually in it. you know, the lead player in my movie. And life is calling on me in this particular moment. Grab the bull by the horns, you know, engage. And engage in a way that is embracing love. And see what happens. And all senses of victimhood and any sense of being dealt a bad hand or being excluded from something or other starts to dissolve, because you just realize this is what is going on for me in my life at this time. So very, very powerful time. At the same time, you know, we're getting all this reinforcement from the outer planets. You know, find your truth, find the resonance within yourself, nourish yourself with what is really worthwhile. Be open to the grace of offering you different concepts and possibilities in life.
Yeah, break through the old patterns, the old ways.
So on we go into the merry month of July.
All right, powerful turning point month. When we come to July 7th, 8th, we've got Mercury going retrograde. So some of you already know what that means, but for those of you who might be newer to the astrological component that we work with, Mercury is a planet that has to do with communication. It's how we connect ourselves with our environment. And by the way, for you human design enthusiasts, Mercury means the same thing in human design as it does in astrology. It's about how we connect ourselves with our environment and how we communicate. So when it goes retrograde is apparent backwards motion. So the planet viewed from Earth appears to be moving backwards. It does that for about 3 weeks, and it does that around 3 times a year. So it's a periodic thing that happens, and it's really simply about updating our communication and updating any part of our life that has to do with how we connect with our environment. So for instance, does your automobile need servicing? Because your automobile is how you get places in your environment, right?
Did you back up your computer?
Yes. Is your cell phone working in the highest way possible? Is it, you know, are you overloaded with, do you need to clean up your electronic files? Are you overloaded with information? Is there a stack of unanswered communication on your desk, metaphorically, or a whole bunch of emails waiting for your attention? In this time that we live in with so much connectivity, you know, there's social media, we could be, I read in the paper that we just this year, in 2018, surpassed...
2019.
No, 2018.
Oh, last year.
Yeah, last year, we just surpassed the amount of time that people spend on electronic devices has now surpassed the amount of time they spend watching television. So it just an interesting, so we're about 3 hours a day engaged with electronic different devices, which means that, you know, the mind can get quite scattered. We're going this direction, that direction, we're communicating with this group, learning this thing, have this invitation coming into our inbox, oh, got to post this, you know, somebody put up a picture about that, got to comment on, you know, it's endless. And so where is your boundary with that? What do you need to do to update not only your systems, but your own way of communicating after all this retrograde is happening with Mercury in the sign of Leo, which is personal self-expression? So how can you update your own personal self-expression? I, for instance, don't spend hardly any time on social media. It's not the best and highest use of my time. What's the best and highest use of your time? Take a look at that while Mercury's retrograde. Update your systems, get current with your communication. That's what the retrograde's for. People often moan and groan when they hear that Mercury retrograde's coming up because they think, oh, you know, things are going to get slowed down. Well, the momentum does slow down as to what we're doing and attending to day to day, but it's so that we can go back and clean up and complete the energy of the past, get those things done and finished, so we free up that energy for new creation as it will come when Mercury once again goes direct here at the end of the month. So we have this playing in the backdrop of these two very powerful eclipses. We have a first quarter moon on July 9th, in which this Mercury retrograde is really emphasized because it just turned retrograde in the sign of Leo, together with Mars, as Chetan was pointing out. Mercury and Mars together. Mars is our work in the world. Both of these planets in the sign of Leo, and each of them in a right angle to Uranus. Uranus is the awakener to higher states of consciousness. It often does it by shaking us up, shaking up our reality. So what's being shaken up? Our expressions, our way of communicating, our way of working, our way of communicating in the workplace, in the marketplace. It's time to change it up. It's also time to bring yourself current. So that's going on. But the other thing that's happening is that the planet Venus, which has to do with our love nature, our ability to attract to ourselves all of those yummy things in life, like love and romance and beauty and money and all the goodies. Venus is in a beautiful aspect with Uranus, saying there's all kinds of new forms of bringing our love into expression and of receiving love, of bringing our creativity into expression and of appreciating the creativity in the world. There's all kinds of new breakthroughs going on with how much we actually are consciously creating our reality moment to moment to moment through our thoughts, attitudes, and our choices and actions. So this is some of the learning going on right now. It's a powerful, big turning point kind of learning here at the first quarter moon, July 9th, taking the energy of the solar eclipse and now bringing it into some kind of, all right, how are you going to put this into action? And we see that with the moon in Libra in a right angle with the point where the sun and Pluto and Saturn oppose. So I hope I'm not losing you here with too much astrological information, but the significance of this is what we're looking at is how can we balance our relationships? How can we bring them into balance so that we're nurtured by them and we're offering nurturing in them and we're continuing to grow and evolve and express in the ways that lead to our highest self-actualization. That's the energy of this first quarter moon.
So I'm going to give a slightly different angle on this one. The sun now is in gateway number 53, the Earth in the 54, and they're in the third line, and they are exactly aligning with these 2 points in space that we call the nodes of the moon, the destiny of humanity, if you will, at this moment in time. So 54 is also aligned with the south node destiny, where we're coming from, is also aligned exactly with the planet Saturn, which is kind of the rule systems. We might call it karma, the dark side or the shadow side of things, you know, complications that have to be met on some level, hopefully with a creative input. So the draw is from the 54, like that is kind of the anchor point to all of this energy at the moment. And the 54 is the gateway of ambition. It's the gateway of how do we get ahead in life? And we get ahead either in a way that's in integrity or, you know, we get ahead by kind of pushing our way through things. So for all of us at the moment, there's this opportunity to kind of, with this Mercury retrograde, to have a look back into our life situation and just see, from the point of view of my personal ambitions, you know, how are they serving me? How are they serving my life? Am I in touch with those dreams that I had in my younger years, or the sense of where I wanted life to take me and the things I was going to put my energy into? Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of backdrop to this whole position in time at the moment. And the 53, on the other hand, which is tied in exactly with the North Node, with this destiny that's taking us forward in our world, is the gateway of new beginnings. So there's a kind of doorway open at the moment into shifting out of things that have not necessarily been working terribly well for us, serving us very well, and shifting our whole perspective into an opening into new experience. And all of us know that, you know, changing a direction, it takes a little bit of courage sometimes, but it can happen very quickly and very simply once we're clear in ourselves. You know, I'm barking up the wrong tree. I'm chasing after something that really doesn't work terribly well for me. Let's see if there's a shift taking place here. You know, how can I connect into my relationships in a more loving way? You know, because that is the energy of this particular time, you know, is the essence of love. How are we putting our love out into the world? One more thing I'd like to interject here, which is the asteroid Chiron that you were talking about a little bit earlier on. This asteroid that somehow relates to our growth between lower consciousness and higher consciousness. And, you know, you'd have to say at this moment in time, there's a massive wake up happening. We are literally being hauled out of a state of low consciousness, if we're open to it, into a place of high consciousness. And Chiron at the moment is sitting in gateway number 17. 17 is the gateway we call following. It's the gateway of opinions. All of us, on some level or another, whether we're aware of it or not, we all have our opinions. And, you know, they're mental opinions. And they're drawn from things that have been programmed in our lives, you know, things that we grew up with, grown into, told about, you know, and can very easily tie into what we call dogma. You know, this is the only way things can happen. I'm not going to have a discussion, argument about it. Here's the rule system, that's that. And when Chiron's involved in this, it's saying, have another look. You know, just see, perhaps this cast in stone idea that you have about something is no longer relevant, and that a great healing can take place when we move on into a very, very different level of consciousness and allow ourselves to drop these fixed opinions, these, you know, I'm only a conservative, I'm only a liberal, I'm only a religious evangelical, or whatever it is, you know, I'm hardwired into something or other, and just see, you know, where did this all come about? And is this still relevant in this time?
Let's take a look at this almost total lunar eclipse that happens on July 16th. So the backdrop, Mercury continuing in its retrograde motion. We're reassessing some things. We're looking back over some things, especially over how we're expressing in the world and what creativity we're bringing forth. In that backdrop, and we've had the solar eclipse already, which has been a pretty big wake-up call for us around our essential self and what is it that we can truly count on in life, and therefore what we value in life. Now with the solar eclipse, we're looking at, okay, so what needs to change in our expression? So a solar eclipse affects the inner essence, and the lunar eclipse, which is now coming July 16th. If I said that wrong a minute ago, the lunar eclipse, July 16th, affects the form of expression. So now how will I go about putting that into action, into my life? So when we look at the lunar eclipse, we see the sun at 24 degrees of the sign of Cancer, opposing the moon 24 degrees of Capricorn. So, of course, this configuration lined up not only with the moving soul path for humanity, but also with Saturn and Pluto, which we've been talking about in Capricorn. So with this whole breakdown of the old dogma, of the old systems, of the old ways that we could count on in our society for hundreds of years, this eclipse is interacting with that. So we're going to be seeing some fairly major changes outpictured in the world. We could see a big reset going on in the financial system. We may see some more of the kinds of things that have been showing up in the news in scandals, where the truth is coming out about where the power really resides in the world now and how it's being utilized. We're going to have some of those kind of breakthroughs on the world scale, but also, of course, in our own lives internally, looking at what is it that we're basing our life on? What do we count as our security? If we've, put away all our money for retirement and we've got it in savings vehicles and investment vehicles, is it truly secure? Is that what we can count on? Or do we need to know that ultimately what we count on is ourselves? I'm not predicting some kind of huge financial crash. But there could be a pretty big financial reset going on following this eclipse. Now, eclipses, they happen on a certain day, but they really affect a whole period of time of at least 3 months. And it can be about 3 months before we see the full effect of the eclipse being played out on the world stage and, of course, being played out in our own lives. But essentially what we're looking at is how are we going to now express our lives? How are we going to now relate to our lives in a way that's truly empowering for ourselves, for our families, for our community, and really for the society that we find ourselves in, because we're not disconnected from the entire world. We're all one humanity, one community, in communication, in harmony. So you could say it's the beginning of the end, but you could say it's the ending so a beginning can happen. It's a powerful turning point. And the turning point, Venus is the planet Venus, which has to do with our love nature, is also involved strongly in this eclipse. And what that's saying is how we value ourselves and how we value others and how we value family and how we value what is truly secure in life. All of that going through a lot of up-leveling. Take another look at it, really come to understand what it is that you can count on in life. What can you count on in life? You can count on yourself. And you can count on your truth. And that's pretty much it. But when you count on that, you know, a therapist I once worked with, gosh, decades ago said, you know, the only thing that we can truly count on in life is truth. And the truth is always friendly. It's always friendly. So tell yourself the truth at this very important turning point in time.
Well, interesting that you end up with that description, because looking at this full moon eclipse, you know, the moon is sitting opposite the sun, and behind it, way back out there, is Pluto. So we're having not only a full moon eclipse, we're having a full Pluto eclipse at the same time.
Right.
And they're all in gateway number 61. And gateway number 61 is this gateway where we get these downloads of what it is that is truthful, what resonates within us. So this full moon eclipse is taking place with the 61 and the fourth line. The fourth line is called holding higher truth, following your clarity to find resonant truth in others. And it's just this time to recognize, you know, who's vibrating in the same frequency I am. You know, who's on track with this thing, who's in tune and in touch with life, who's finding their own integrity and living by that integrity. And it's a very, very powerful moment in time for us to realize, you know, the truth is absolute. And the fact of it is we are no longer in this Piscean age. We're no longer in these old systems anymore. And it's just a fascinating thing. You know, occasionally these references to other ages have been recorded. They literally last about 2,500 years, each of them. But mostly what gets left behind from these other ages is a kind of myth, because the lifestyle is so completely different from what it was that went on before it. And the lifestyle we're living in now, it's like, yes, we look at these monuments that are around the world, but we can't really relate to how people were using them. It's always guesswork in a sense. And so we really are in a new frontier at the moment. And as I say, this alignment with our truth, recognizing this resonant truth within ourselves and the truth within the people around us, you know, that is what's really the guide for us at this moment in time. And will take us out of this sense that we can't cope anymore, that everything's happening too fast and too quickly, and we can't keep up. And it's just that thing, come back into the present tense, come back into your own truth in any particular moment. And it's always there. And as you say, it is always friendly.
Beautiful. So as we move towards following the full moon eclipse, the lunar eclipse, as we move towards the third quarter moon, which is the point of maximum focus and intensity of gathering the seeds and the essence of the realizations that we've had, that third quarter moon happening July 24th. But as we approach it, the sun will move into the sign of Leo. It does that late in the day Pacific time on July 22nd. So for most of the world, July 23rd, the sun leaves the sign of Cancer, moves into Leo, and we really are going to have a very different play. It's like, Act One, the curtain has come down on Act One, and then the curtain prepares to open on Act Two. We do still have Mercury retrograde that goes through the end of the month. So we're still looking back over and completing and bringing ourselves current with many things that are important for us to look at and work with. Venus has been right there traveling with Mercury, and it's particularly strong at this point at the third quarter moon, July 24th, with Mercury retrograde. Mercury, the planet of communication, remember, connecting with our environment, retrograde, exactly conjoining Venus in the sign of Cancer. So we get a good heads up at this third quarter about what we're actually doing in order to facilitate the kind of change that needs to happen in our own personal lives, which of course first happens from our own personal consciousness. Now we'll be back with you again on July 20th for our broadcast, our monthly broadcast. So we'll be diving deeper into the latter part of July at that time, but we'll just spend a little bit of time giving you a forelook at what we'll be experiencing for the last week of July, starting here at the third quarter moon. And essentially, with the sun moving out into Leo, it's going to be moving into this right angle with the planet Uranus, which is the planet of change, awakening to higher states of consciousness. It's that sudden sort of explosion of awareness or sudden awakening that happens that's meant to shake us up out of our comfort zone so that we can look at the higher perspective, so that we look at our lives from a grand perspective instead of from a sort of tunnel vision kind of perspective, and see the big picture, and then find our orchestration, our creation within that big picture. Mars moving into a little bit later in Leo, now moving into a trine with Jupiter. I say now, I mean around the third week and the last week of July, moving into this beautiful flowing 120-degree angle called a trine or triangle with Jupiter in its home sign of Sagittarius. So we get
Jupiter gets a good...
Jupiter, oh my God, Jupiter in its home sign has been, usually it's just glorious there, but it's had quite a bit of challenge this year, as those of you who've been following our work know. But Mars, which brings this blast of energy in the sign of Leo. It's a fire sign. It's about, I'm raring to go. Give me the vision, and Jupiter provides that vision from its own home sign in Sagittarius. We can see where it is that we could aim our life in a way that could be the most deeply fulfilling and highly productive. So that's the energy coming out of this very powerful lunar eclipse mid-month, taking us into the latter part of the month, seeing what really has value for us, what we can count on, finding that still point, as Chetan was saying, finding our clarity, connecting more with our higher self, and the pulse of our truth, moment to moment to moment, and in this time of our lives personally, and in this time of massive global awakening.
So from about the 18th onwards through the 24th, great time to be traveling, great time to be engaging in stimulating activities. And of course, if you are traveling, Mercury is retrograde, so make sure you got your tickets organized.
You didn't forget your passport.
You're right. And, I'm not a big believer in insurance, but sometimes, some kind of travel insurance is worthwhile. And just, check that according to your own truth. Always, realize that all of us have been given this access to truth. And the quickest way in there is through following our own authority. And the authority through your human design chart has always been very, very straightforward, very clear. And it just takes practice. I just see in human design, it's a self-remembering device, not complicated. There's all kinds of different areas of human design that can be studied, but honestly speaking, when it really comes down to it, by acknowledging a few simple things in your design, type, authority, perhaps profile, certainly engaging with your life theme, it gives you a real strong recognition of what it is that's playing out for you on an individual basis. So the energy towards this end of the month of July, we're going into this life theme that we call the unexpected. The sun drops into gateway number 31. This is a voice of influence. And again, there can be some very powerful influences going on around us. And at this time that the sun's gone into the 31, Mars is also in gateway number 7. So all of us by design have this channel that we call the alpha, this strong leadership principle. And the great thing about any leadership is being clear, am I a leader or am I a follower? And if I'm following something, is it in integrity? Is it in accordance with my own life experience and truth? And if I'm following somebody blindly, some politician or some religious icon, just be really clear, is this something that actually resonates on a level of truth within me? Or is this somebody else's fabrication? And so as this month comes towards an end, just being very, very clear in ourselves, we may get some heads up about things. Wow, I've been following some principle or other, and it has absolutely no bearing towards my own integrity at all. And time to realize and appreciate that.
Let's take a look at, we'll just spend a few minutes taking a look at the latter part of July. As we already mentioned, Mars now in the sign of Leo, high creativity and perhaps adventure and exploration. Growth, we see where the growth is. So it might not be time to jump in and actualize all of it, but we certainly can be working on it and working towards it. And then when Mercury goes direct, right here at the end of the month, we'll be ready to go with our new creativity. So the sun, having moved now firmly into the sign of Leo, moving into, as we get into later July, like towards the end, moving into a triangle with Chiron, which we've been talking about, which is this huge asteroid that functions more like a planet that has to do with awakening ourselves to our spirit nature and to grounding our spirit nature in form so that we're expressing more and more from our higher self. The sun is going to come and form a triangle with Chiron, giving us that view as to really how to do that. And the sun at the new moon, which happens July 31st, we've got the sun and the moon together, 8 degrees of Leo. We've got Venus at 5 degrees of Leo, and all of them forming this triangle with Chiron. So big awakening into what's possible to create when we're aligned with spirit. Of course, we'll be back with you on July 20th for our next broadcast, in which we'll take you in more detail through the latter part of July and into August.
And just a final little bit on the human design perspective at the end of the month, this new moon that's taking place, the sun and the moon both in gateway number 33, and the second line, 33 is the gateway of retreat. And wherever you see a retreat, great time to be reflecting, taking moments in time to just reflect what is going on in my life. And it's going to be a pretty busy month, the month of July. A lot of things going on, but there's some very foundational themes within it. So I hope we've been able to encourage you to recognize and engage these themes.
So we'll be back with you then. And it's been a blessing, as always, to get to share this information with you. We hope it's been inspiring for you, that you take it and you use it and be more and more aware of it as you move through your life. Many blessings, and we'll be back with you next month.
See you next time. Bye for now.